Let's talk about three high-definition TV providers: Comcast, DirecTV, and Dish. I've used all three. I was a happy customer of Direct for many years. I started with them when they were using TiVo equipment. We purchased several generations of Direct DVRs and had our antenna and cabling updated several times. Our recent troubles began when we got into dispute with Direct about ownership of one of our DVRs. Even though we had clearly purchased equipment through the years, including one of their most recent units, they insisted that our most recent DVR had been leased. They insisted that we had paid them several $100s for the privilege of paying them monthly rent. But our disagreement is not relevant here, except as a result, we tossed Direct and we tried Comcast. And a few weeks later, we tossed Comcast and tried Dish. Here's my perspective on how the services of these three companies compare. It seems that a lot of what these companies offer is based on an attempt not to use TiVo. Direct stopped using TiVo when Direct's owner at the time, Rupert Murdoch, bought a competing DVR builder. And Dish is in a patent fight with TiVo. Neither Comcast, nor Direct, nor Dish have TiVo features such as speculative recording. Let me start with the easy case, Comcast. Comcast's DVR seems designed for people who want to live in a standard definition world. Some Comcast HD-DVRs don't even have HDMI outputs. One of our units had only component output. One rather annoying of Comcast DVR is that its control screens looked as if they were designed for a myopic octogenarian watching on a 15-inch standard definition television. Where we live, Comcast presented only about a dozen HD channels, and several of those channels looked as if they were upscaled versions of standard definition content. I understand that Comcast's offerings vary considerably from place to place, so your experience with Comcast may vary considerably from mine. Comcast's DVR was mediocre, which means that compared to Dish and Direct, it was pretty good. Overall, we found Comcast inadequate and not at all a viable competitor to Dish or Direct. One note of warning: many of Comcast's support people are in call centers that are outside the United States. Comcast asks that you give these people your social security number. Don't. Let's move to the big guns, Direct and Dish. My wife and I don't care much about sports programming, so this review ignores the huge emphasis that Direct and Dish both put on sports channels. Dish has a wider selection of non-sport content than Direct. Dish seems less expensive in terms of the monthly price for their channel packages. Both Dish and Direct charge monthly rental fees for their DVRs. Direct is a much higher initial one-time DVR charge than Dish, but Direct's monthly charge is slightly lower. Beware that for both Dish and Direct you are renting the DVR, not buying it. Both Direct and Dish have decent HD video quality. Direct seems to have a small edge. Their DVR puts out 1080p, while Dish's is only 1080i. Direct's system seems less sensitive to the effects of rain. Even in the absence of rain, Dish seems more prone to video breakup than Direct, and Dish's audio sometimes stutters for a while after resuming playback. Dish can take several seconds to begin playing after you jump around in the program or change channels. This can be very, very annoying. Overall, Direct's system feels more agile than Dish's when it comes to changing channels. Direct's system requires that two coaxial cables be dragged from the antenna down to the DVR. Dish requires only one cable. Dish can use your house wiring to communicate to your house network and thence to the internet and back to Dish Central. But this feature does not work if the DVR is plugged into a UPS. The big difference between Dish and Direct are the DVR units. Both are awful. Direct's has been called the Yugo of DVRs. But the Dish DVR might be aptly called the Trabant of DVRs. If you don't know about the Trabant, look it up on the Wikipedia. The Direct DVR is a fascinating collection of enthusiastic blue LEDs that are bright enough to strip the paint off a wall. Fortunately, the LED light show can be dimmed or turned off, but the Direct DVR loves to turn the show back on again when it does its frequent software updates. The Direct DVR has a user interface that has plenty of weak design choices. The user runs into dead ends and there are race conditions, so that the same sequence of button pushes on the remote will lead to different results. The Direct DVR records a 30-minute lagging buffer that allows the user to record a full copy of a show even if the first few minutes were missed. In comparison, the Dish DVR is entirely unforgiving. In general, the Direct DVR records and plays programs reasonably well. One can create schedules of future recordings that are likely to be actually honored by the DVR. This is in stark contrast to the Dish DVR, a device that is a user interface that I found nearly unusable. It seems more a video game than a tool to accomplish anything. We found that it often fails in its most basic function. It will refuse to record a show, even when there is no conflict. The Dish program scheduling feature seems intentionally designed to frustrate rather than facilitate. And when it comes to searching for future programs, the DirecTVR is far and away the more usable of the two. The Dish can be scheduled over the internet, but the web pages are hard to use and do not render well in the Firefox browser. And when one manages to get through the web pages, the request often fails to get to the DVR. The DirecTVR almost never crashes. It receives software updates quite frequently, often nightly, which are done with a show of bright blue LEDs doing pirouettes in the front panel. The Dish DVR is so crash-prone that it often becomes unusable. We've had as many as half dozen crashes in a 30-minute period. We have found sequences of menu commands that will always crash the Dish unit. We have reported them to Dish and have never heard even a whimper of response, much less received a cure. The Dish reset button is too weak a remedy for many of the Dish crashes. Thus it is important that there be an easy way to disconnect the Dish DVR from the wall power. Each time the Dish DVR reboots, it spools up some very noisy fans. These run for a couple of minutes, and sometimes they run forever, in which case the box has to be disconnected from wall power. The noisy fan cycle ends with the box doing a satellite search. This usually takes a few minutes. Sometimes it takes a long time. Sometimes it takes forever. Dish's support line that the time was affected by rain, but we've had it take a very long time on clear nights. We've become utterly too familiar with the Dish reboot and resynchronization cycle. In addition, the Dish DVR wants to do a daily reboot, loud fans and all. By default, this occurs at 3 a.m. Don't put a Dish DVR into a bedroom unless you go deep into its menu system and change that reboot time. Otherwise, you will get a 3 a.m. wake-up call that sounds like a jet aircraft preparing to take off. It is possible to say something good about the Dish DVR. Apart from the startup fans, it is quieter than the Direct unit. We could hear an upstairs Direct unit in the room below. We had to put a soundproofing pad under the Direct DVR to cut down on its vibrations. Apart from the rush of fans during a reboot, the Dish unit is very quiet. In summary, none of the DVR offerings from Comcast, DirecTV, or Dish are very good. None are as good as an old TiVo or the Myth TV open source DVR. The Comcast and Direct units are, if not good, at least they are usable and reliable. They seem to be the result of minimally capable design and implementation. I will not make the same statement about the Dish DVRs. Is our Dish DVR a fluke, a one-off lemon? We have two units. They behave in the same ill ways, so I believe that Dish's problems are systemic. My overall feeling is that Dish could be a superior product to Direct, but all of Dish's advantages are lost because their DVR is so bad. Even if Dish were to fix the mountains of crash bugs in their DVR, they would still have a DVR product that can functionally compared very poorly to its competitors. Dish is engaged in a patent dispute with TiVo. As of the making of this video, June 2010, TiVo appears to be winning. I understand that Dish has expressed that it has the capability to disable all of its customer DVRs should TiVo prevail. When we were signing up, Dish never mentioned this sword of Damocles. I suspect that many of the weaknesses of Dish's DVR arise because Dish is trying to avoid TiVo's patents. Perhaps Dish ought to befriend TiVo. From my experiences, I'd hope that Dish tosses its DVR into the recycling bin and replaces it with a TiVo unit.